Welcome to the fourth part of the series, actually overclocking, obviously the most fun part. When you've finished insulating and preparing your setup, it is now time to go. As you can see, I just stuffed as much paper towel in there as I can. There's no problem in over insulating. You can go as far as you want. And obviously liquid nitrogen, and I'm just going to start. I'll put the camera down now so you can see on the screen. 99 is what we're looking for. There's another video up online, overclocking the UD5H. Dinos22 actually posted it. It's an incredible and very informative video. It's a 1 hour long, or 1 hour and a half about. I'm going to summarize that basically. So I'll be repeating quite a lot of what he said. So I'll post the video link in the description so you can go check his video out if you want more info on how to clock. Okay, just for starters, what we can do is just look at your mount. That is the temperature from the pot, from the container that is sitting on your CPU. It's at 17 degrees now, and it's good practice to look at your BIOS temperature, which is, trying to find focus, which is around 35, 33 degrees, which is okay. It's a bit of a delta. So what you can do is start cooling it down. It's also same as in Dinos' video, make sure you have a fan taking all the cold fumes of the liquid nitrogen away from your system so that it doesn't fall and cool everything down. I close my memory up like this because it gets really cold and then creates water, and I don't like that. And also my memory doesn't need a fan because the chips are Samsung and they really don't get warm at all, no matter what volts. Okay, so now we're dropping in temperature at around 4 degrees. Looking in the BIOS, it's dropping quite fast. Doesn't look very accurate, but I did check my mount and I'm pretty sure it's fine. Okay, so Ivy Bridge has two sets of cold bugs, one before 105 BLCK and one after. If you increase your BLCK past 105, your cold bug will most likely disappear in most cases. So normally you would find a cold boot bug before 105 BLCK and a cold boot bug after. But normally there is no cold bug after 105 BLCK. So that's almost the most important setting to do first off, just so that you don't run into any issues. Okay, I'm going to take you through the BIOS real quick. We will only be chilling here, not in the 3D BIOS because we don't need that. Okay, first of all, advanced frequency settings. You can create a standard, pretty straightforward BIOS profile for yourself. Just get something working. You can start at around 5 GHz. Almost all CPUs should do that. I know my memory, and my memory is pretty quick, so I can work with the 24 multiplier, but I will go quite high with BLCK. Because my CPU, I want high memory frequencies, but not that high. I have to start here. Okay, now you go into the advanced CPU core features. You can disable almost everything because we won't need them. You will only, depending on what benchmark you will run, if it's SuperPi or anything light 3D, you can keep it on 2 cores. Some benchmarks perform better with 3 or 4 cores, so you can go test that for yourself. It's always good to know what you're doing, not doing it because someone is telling you to. So this video is just a guideline of how you should start. I'm keeping my CPU cold at the moment. I'm cooling it down. I know my cold bug is minus 135 degrees, so I don't have to worry about it cold bugging yet. Okay, now I'm at the memory timing options. Keep everything else like this. You can make it quick because expert means you can tune both memory DIMMs separately, but I don't need that. I just need the quick, which will set the same settings for both. This is pretty straightforward timings for Samsung ICs on the memory, which I can tune quite a bit with my memory. These settings don't matter much for 3D, but for 2D you should definitely experiment with them. On extreme systems there is a very nice thread created by I don't know, Hondacity or Honda City, I don't really know how to pronounce his name, but go look at the screenshots and the users they have the info of these settings in the screenshots, and you can look in what ballpark you should start tuning these. But for now I'll just leave it at auto, although I do want 1T command rate because 2T is a little bit slower. I'm not sure on Ivy Bridge, but I'll just keep it at 1. Okay, then next setting, voltage settings. 3D power, you don't need to change anything except load line calibration to extreme, which creates almost no V-droop at all, which is pretty awesome. Just pretty strong for this board. Everything else, auto is fine. CPU Vcore Options, I'll start at 1.5 just because. VTT, you don't even have to push this high. I think you can even keep it at 1.1 or even at stock, at auto would also be fine. But I found I get a little bit more stability this way at high clocks. Graphics, we're going to turn this off now soon. PLL, you don't have to worry. Sometimes lower PLL works better than higher, so I just leave it at auto because I know that works fine. My memory, the voltage, this is quite high. You can experiment with your own, see how much voltage you need with your memory. Play around with it, see what scales. Mine doesn't scale after this, but it does scale up to 1.88 volts, so I'll leave it at that. PC health settings, nothing. You can disable the fan settings just so they always blow at 100%. This is important, Gen 2. Because it can create issues when you're running a Gen 3 or going cold. For the graphics card I'm using, a GTX 580, Gen 2 is fine. And the 3D Mark 01 boost called, I think it's called Legacy Enhancement in the different BIOSes if you're confused. That just boosts 3D Mark 01 and all the benchmarks. It boosts the score by a little bit. Obviously very important setting for 3D Mark 01. That's about it for the tuning options. I'm also going to go back. I just want to double check everything that Yep, everything looks correct. Now we're going to BIOS features, disable this, execute disable bit. That'll increase 2D scores by a little bit. And obviously these, you just disable whatever you don't need. I'm going to use IDE because XP. Disable. Don't need that. Don't need. So just figure out what you need. There, I'm disabling the internal graphics because I don't want it to be on and creating problems while I'm going cold. Okay, that should be it. Now, I have two drives, hard drives, so I just need to put the right boot. Okay, the right one is booting, so that's fine. And yeah, just go through the BIOS. You can save your profiles here at the last menu. I'm just going to save it as LN2 ready. I'm still at minus 64 well, I'm at minus 63 degrees. Just something safe. I don't want to bug my CPU already because I'm not over 105 BLCK yet. I'm still at 100, you see. And now if I boot this setup, if it boots, then I can go into Windows and start playing around with stability, but if it boots now past 105 BLCK, that means cooling should no longer be an option. I mean, a problem. You can just take it down and start finding your call bug. Most of Ivy Bridge CPUs, like literally most of them, don't have a call bug past 105. So if you do find one, you're unlucky, but just check anyway. Okay, so now you can see I'm using BIOS S2, which has voltage options past 1.9, and my CPU, I know it needs past 1.9 volts, so I need it. I need this BIOS, because the normal BIOSes are great, the newest one, if something, but I need this for high volts. Minus 16 degrees, that's also the maximum this BIOS can read, so don't worry about that, just follow your own gut. Okay, so I'm just going to exit and boot Windows to start clocking. The cool thing about the GIGABYTE UD5H is the tool that you use to overclock within Windows. You can change multiplier, BLCK, volts, everything in Windows. So I really like it because previous motherboards I had to boot at something like 6 GHz just to be able to bump to 6.5 while I'm in Windows, but with this board you can boot 5 GHz if you want and save LN2, because I know booting XP eats a lot of LN2 when you're at a high clock. But now I can boot at 5 GHz no problem and clock up to 6.5 in Windows, which is pretty insane, so I love that feature. Okay, now that we're in Windows, we can start clocking, see what the CPU does. If you don't know your CPU, if you're new to this board and you also haven't tested your CPU yet, I'm just disabling a few things. If it's a new CPU, you have to obviously start finding the max, and I advise you to go look at Dinos22's video on how to find the max clock of a CPU. It's really, I love his method. I actually didn't do it that way, but I do it this way now because I think it's pretty awesome the way he finds the max of a CPU. I was here, let's look. 1.5 volts, flat. 5 GHz ish. The settings are up. Memory at the clock that I want. So what Dinos does in his video is he keeps the CPU very low and just clocks his BLCK up to whatever you predict you would need. I know I need 112 times 57, which will give 6.5 something gigahertz. I know that's what I need, and I tested my memory to be stable at that speeds before I clock the CPU. So just make sure your memory doesn't cause problems when you're clocking CPU. You don't want memory to get in the way of your clocking. Also, this TRCF, I didn't change it, I left it auto, and that is pretty damn high. It doesn't have to be that high, it can be close to 100 even. So when you're in the BIOS, you can take it down to like 112. If you have Samsung memory, if you have faster memory, you can take it even lower. But go play around with that. Okay, so let's just clock CPU. Okay, I'm at minus 100, and I would normally 1.7 volts is okay for minus 100. Normally you don't have to volt immediately, but I'm gonna speed burn now. So okay, every CPU should do this, 5.4 gigahertz. If it can't, then you're very unlucky for you. And then you just clock it up. You just keep going small increments. Okay, I'm going big increments now because I know my CPU, but I'll take it slower just now so you can follow. Okay, let's say, okay, I can up this to 1.8. Okay, now I'm at 5.8 gigahertz at 1055 BLCK. And let's say you start freezing at, because now you can run a benchmark just to test your stability, like SuperPi, 1M, just make it run, see if it passes. I'm at minus 100 now, so I can go all the way down to minus 180 degrees. Okay, so it passed, which means you're kind of stable, pi stable, which doesn't say a lot for your 3D, but like Danos in his video, you can try 8M, and if it passes 8M, it's almost guaranteed to pass 3D tests. Okay, let's say 5.8 is close to your maximum, and you can't jump multiply, you can't jump to 56, because it's too big of a jump. Stay at 55 and start tuning your B clock. Like if I go from 105.5 to 106, it'll bump it up by 20 megahertz. Then you test again. See if it's stable, see if it's stable, test again, see if it's stable. If you start freezing, try taking your temperatures lower. If it helps, keep going. If it stops helping, well, if you get to maximum temperature, you can start tuning volts. And you can tune volts until that stops helping as well. Then you should not increase more. I know my CPU works all the way up to 1.94 volts, but that's something you should test for yourself rather than just bumping it up. So yeah, that's how you bench with this board. The awesome thing about this application is you can change all these values real quick. The response is awesome, and the functionality is, everything works perfectly. There's my temperature, only at minus 115. CPU running, and you can just, while you bench, obviously not right now, this isn't cold yet, but it gets cold, and also around here by the power it gets cold, so just watch it. Keep checking your system. If you're benching for like an hour or 2 hours, you need to start looking at your system to see if everything is okay. Feel your memory. Memory might get real cold. Not too hard, you don't want to crash your system touching it. But for now, everything is still cool because it's still early. Cool, I'm going to start booting at my main settings and just show you. But at the moment, booted at 5 gigahertz, already up to 5.8 just by changing a few settings, and that's big jumps, and it's still stable, which is amazing. I haven't had motherboards do that before. I'm now going to boot at my highest settings. Well, not highest in BIOS, but just so that I can clock to my highest speed in Windows. Still have to cool that down all the way to as cold as it can go, minus 180 something. My temperature probe only reads to minus 160, but it is actually colder. I do have a K-type probe, but even some K-type probes can't read that low because liquid nitrogen is just so damn cold. So booting Windows. The probe freaking out a bit. Also, when you get to around minus 140, start making a loud noise in liquid nitrogen because it's reaching a very responsive boiling point here. You'll see your pot reacts a lot quicker now as well. When you throw in more, it reacts very quickly. The temperature just drops super fast. And that is my maximum. Minus 160 something. It won't really go much lower. Just because my probe can't. But it is colder. It's like minus 180 something. Okay, now let me clock. Okay, I know my CPU can do 6.55 gigahertz, so I'll try to get it as close as I can, because I did test that on a different board. I don't know if this board will take it higher or the same height, so I'm also interested to see. Open SuperPi, which will just be roughly my stability test. What I'm going to do now is, I know once you overclock extreme, you know your CPU's limit and you know what core goes a little bit higher than the other one. And I know core 0 for me goes higher, so it'll be more stable on that core. Just play around with your CPU, try to figure out what it wants. Some CPUs are even better at 4 cores, 4 threads, that K404 posted on HWBot. If you want to know more about overclock rankings, go to hwbot.org if you don't know the site already. I assume anyone who wants to try liquid nitrogen should know a little bit about overclocking already. Okay, so I'm going to take this to 1.8 just because I know I will need this much already. And my temperature is all the way down, so it's no problem. My predicted frequency over here is, I know I need 65555, that's what I'll need. Divided by, alright, first I need to just figure out what multiplier and what BLCK I'm going to use. I know I want my memory, at 1300, no, 1350, so I'll take my BLCK up to 12.0. I still need a little bit more because I want my optimum memory frequency. I know it'll run at this, which is 2700, and I like that speed. So now I will start tuning my multiplier. Cool thing is, it tells you the predicted speed, so that's pretty cool. Also, don't forget about your CPU like I've done now. Keep it cold. And also, don't keep your pot full at all times, because that'll just make everything too cold. Just splash, splash, but pay attention to your system. Okay, I can take this to 55, which is you'll see now, 6.2 gigahertz roughly. I can take the volts up as well to about 183-ish. That should be fine. I just want to check, see if my memory is happy and CPU is happy. This is just 1M, so you can take this stability with a grain of salt. So it's not a good stability test. Like, go check down this video. 8M is a good stability test, a rough stability test. Okay, I'm going to go to 57, which is 6.4. Should be reaching, yeah, this should be reaching close to my CPU's max now, so I'll have to start taking precaution, see if it's stable. So far I'm liking this board. You know, I booted at what, 5 gigahertz? 5 something? 5.5 I think. And I've almost gone up a whole gigahertz and it's no problem, which is awesome. Okay, I'm going to start bumping up things to where my CPU should be happy at. and it's really close to its max already. Like now I won't change my multiplier anymore because it'll just bump that up too high. I'm going to start tweaking my BLCK a little. It'll take my memory up a little bit more, but I know my memory will stay stable. I just want to see if it'll run. There, it's a good time now to see if you are actually still stable. It's looking good. Nice. But then again, this is just on one core, which doesn't mean anything. But when you're on SuperPi, you do want. Okay, I'm taking it up to 1.95. Scary enough, my CPU still scales at this temperature, at that volts and this temperature, but you need to find the right balance between temperature and volts, because if I volt too high, the CPU will get too warm inside and stability will get worse. So more volts doesn't always mean better. So just test for yourself. I'm just going to check the volts to see if it actually does 1.95. And I just checked and it does. It does around 1.93, but it'll stay rock solid there. Yeah, 1.944-ish seems to be where my CPU is happy at. Actually, I'm going to take it to 6555555, which is the max of my CPU. Well, previously. Maybe I'll get more now. I actually don't want to run Pi, I want to run Pi fast because I want to see I would get a better score than my previous. As you can see, it's running very slow now because my graphics driver wasn't initialized because I plugged in a new card, and PiFast won't give a good score if you don't have your graphics drivers in order. So I probably have to restart to get that working. Then in that case I'll just run some more Pi. Probably will get a better score anyway. This is also not a tweaked OS. This is literally just a normal install. You can download shaved OSs on most overclocking forums. It'll just boot faster and be a little bit more efficient for your runs. So wow, 6555 is perfectly stable actually, which normally was pretty bad to get this stable. That's around 2710 megahertz memory, which is pretty awesome. And yeah. Now you can just run, keep running. After about 2 hours you need to check your system, like I said, and see if it's happy. Once you run into some problems and you really can't get the same stability that you had previously, you should probably stop, cool down, take everything off and dry it out. Never fight this system. If you're starting to run into silly stability issues, even at stock speeds, you know something is watering up or something is not lacquer, so it's better to just stop and try again later. Thank you. Hopefully this helped a little bit. Obviously post questions in the comments or message me.